I think we need to stop looking for villain. It's too easy to say the water is bad, the chemicals in the food, sun is going to hurt you, you're going to get cancer, like the Bluetooth thing. It's endless. The utility of money is so important because I don't think that money will make you happy, but it is a utility that will create resources for you that if you really wanted your freedom, that if you really wanted more control over your time, that is the utility that will grant you all of those things.
Welcome back to Catalyst Talks podcast. Today, I am sitting with my friend Neal Conlon, an exceptional human with an insatiable appetite to help people succeed in their highest potential. He's a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, corporate strategist, and an amazing coach. And I rarely or never have coaches on the show. We're not talking coachy coach stuff today. We're talking about grit, determination, and spirit. So, folks, get ready for this episode. It will inspire you to dig deep, refocus, and get real. For Neal's full bio, you'll find all details and information in the show notes at catalysttalks.com. Remember, hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening. Give us a like, a thumbs up, and a share. Your attention means the world to us, and it fuels this work. Welcome, Neal. To start us off, I want our listeners to know who you are and, give you that opportunity to answer the question, who are you and what's top of mind for you lately?
Ooh, what a great opening. Thank you so much for doing this. And I love that we're going to get to share this space today. It's going to be fantastic. Yeah, I used to say when people would ask me that question, I'm just a kid from Queens, New York. There's an element to that I think is extremely true. Is just, I grew up in Forest Hills, Queens, in a very normal, as normal as New York can be. Middle class family. But over the years, it's become really, really interesting in that I've realized and kind of put together this concept that most of my grandparents were immigrants to this country. And what's interesting about that is they have this kind of like salt of the earth, hardworking disposition. And they always said to me this kind of US immigrant story, which is like, in this country, you can be anything you want. You can do anything you want here. They never told me I had to go to school and get a college degree. They never told me I got to play by the rules. They never said any of those kind of belief systems. And ironically, I didn't grow up with a father figure around, and my mom had me when she was very young. So I didn't have any of the traditional kind of foundations that are installed in the majority of people. And for years, I saw that as a weakness. And over my own kind of self-development, personal journey, whatever you want to call it, I realized that I didn't have to unpack or unlearn a lot of that foundation because I was never had it. And it actually became a superpower in that I had to develop more internal work, internal mechanisms so that I could conquer those things. And then it came to a place later in life where I've had to develop the external foundations, the scaffolding, as I call it, have this kind of reverse journey I think I've realized over time, that's what I've been doing is my journey's been like the reverse. Most people, who decide to go down the world of personal development or spiritual work or whatever you want to call it, they have these big foundations that are kind of built on the exterior identity of themselves. And then they have to break that foundation down and then get into the internal work. And I've realized that like I went internal first for years, and then over time have kind of built the outside identity mechanisms based on that. And it's really been this kind of amazing journey because I understand how challenging and crazy these experiences can be, especially in today's world. And I always say to people, like, I would not want anybody to go through the journey that I've been through. I took the long way to get here, I think, but I do wish all the lessons. And that's why I love sharing so many of those lessons with people.
You talk about choosing your identity, and you had to choose it you had the opportunity to choose it at a young age is what I'm hearing. And in today's world where it is so chaotic, and even with our identities, every day we kind of can have a new identity. So talk a little bit about what you mean by choosing identities now. Like when people are so rooted in those old scaffolds, like how do you choose your identity?
Yeah, there's a level of humility that I think a lot of people don't understand that I have, because I'm very, very forward. Everything is, I'm leaned in on everything. Everything is, I take the first step. And
Yeah.
everything is, by the time somebody else in their mind is thinking through whether or not they should do the thing or not do the thing, I've already tried it 3 times, fell on my face 3 times, gotten up, learned 3 different things, and moved forward. That's why my brand, my personal brand, is Press Forward. That's brass tacks of what it is. And I have examples, so many examples in the identity, that there really is only 2 things in the human condition that will move you forward in life. The first one is a relationship. You're going to meet a partner, and that person is going to move you towards something. You're going to meet a business partner who can offer you something, access to a relationship. So that's going to be the first one. The second one is always going to be changing your belief system. And really, I've got multiple identity examples of, I was a kid who grew up in Queens who was a troublemaker, got beaten by a police officer when I was little, kicked out of multiple schools, and realized that that was not, even at a young age, realized that that was not the identity that I wanted to pursue. And then I joined the Marine Corps and served a bunch of years in the Marine Corps. And then for 2 or 3, maybe 5 years after I got out, I led every conversation I had with, tell me about who you are. And I was like, I'm a Marine Corps veteran. Like, that was my leading identity there. And I actually wrote a blog in like 2010 or something like that, that's on LinkedIn, that I share with veterans to this day. And the blog is titled "The Day I Didn't Have to Be a Marine." And I got to a point where I reversed my identity, and
Mhm.
it was a job that I had been hired for, that the only place that I mentioned that I was in the military was in the very bottom of the resume. And it was such a freeing aspect of, and a lesson to be like, oh, the only reason why that wasn't a priority in my identity was because I didn't mention it. And then fast forward, just to give one other example, like legitimately, this is very, my last, big business. I was running sales and marketing for $100 million a year company, a cybersecurity company. And about 4 years before that, I decided that I was going to get into the world of cybersecurity, and I was going to become a cybersecurity, let's call it, influencer in the space. I had no formal cybersecurity training, no certifications. This is why I'm so adamant about this. I just looked around and said
Mhm.
this. I said, cybersecurity people, the good ones, all have beards and all have sleeve tattoos. And a year and a half into my quest to become a cybersecurity leader,
Oh.
when the former deputy director of counterintelligence for the CIA, it was introducing me across the globe to some of the most affluent cybersecurity people in the world. Meet Neal Conlon. He's a cybersecurity guy. You should listen to what he's talking about. I was like, aha, I've done this.
Did you have a beard yet and sleep?
Yes. Yep. And so what we don't realize, it's such a conflictive journey to look at, like, look down at who you are, and then ask yourself, like, this is just like, to shrink this down to a lesson for anybody who's listening to this. I constantly look at myself and I go, what am I choosing? Why am I choosing to have this relationship with somebody? Or why am I choosing not to have this relationship with somebody? Why am I choosing to have this relationship with myself? Why am I not choosing to have this relationship with myself? And because I don't have a lot of those foundations, I think I can look at them, like, dissect them a little bit differently. But like for anybody who's listening to the podcast, I got a really great example. For 20 or 30 years of my life, I was in a relationship with somebody, married multiple times, dated people, but I never thought if I was or wasn't in a healthy relationship because I didn't know what a healthy relationship was. And so I asked myself through this identity journey that we all go through, what does a healthy relationship look like? And healthy relationships have really good intimacy and honesty and trust and all the things. But it wasn't until I actually sat there and said, I want to have a healthy relationship that I was able to actually acquire and be in a healthy relationship because I chose that in Neal's identity, Neal is in a healthy relationship. And it's a very hard thing for people to do because we look at our parents or we look at all the examples of relationships and we go, well, that's the example I have. I'm going to follow that. That's an identity thing. And so it's wild because in 2025, we have so much access to so much information and so much availability that it becomes almost overwhelming to go to someone and say, you have problems, you're stuck, you don't know who you want to be, when really the only thing you need to focus on is, what is the identity that you want to have and what are the actions and behaviors that equal that identity.
You mentioned freedom. You said it was really freeing when you chose not to identify solely as a Marine Corps veteran. And I want to talk about freedom because I'm experiencing like the capacity and what is available, the amount of information, and it's like every month is a new version of this early journey we're on with access to every single thing, and there's just so much. And I'm noticing, is this creating more freedom or is this creating less freedom? And I'm thinking about it in my mind. Like my mind just feels full, really, really full lately. 'Cause there's just access to so much and everything I need and the information's there, and I'm an information seeker. So let's speak about freedom. Like, first of all, before we go into AI or even what this information overload world is right now and the positives of it, which I know is your thing. What does freedom mean to you? Let's just talk about what freedom means on the base level.
I think for me, this freedom thing is really interesting. I think something also you said is what's really hard to recognize is there's a mechanism going on right now that's actually been going on for several years. I started to call it reshuffling of the deck. Like, really, that is what is going on. And to
Yeah.
explain that for a moment, it is very hard to build a foundation or a structure during moments of change because we need steadiness, right? It needs to complete, right? We can't be in between the caterpillar and the cocoon and the butterfly, and we don't know what to call it, right? It's the metamorphosis of it. It's in change. And so I think for right now, we're in this moment of change, right? The example I always go back to because it's an easy one is remember, like, I don't know, I'm dating myself now, but 10 years ago, the Kindle came out and everybody was like, books are dead. And everybody had a Kindle, right? And many, many bookstores did close up just because they couldn't financially sustain or weather the storm. And the deck of cards started to reshuffle. Now, fast forward a year after that, everybody was like, I don't know, this Kindle thing, I kind of missed the smell of a book page. I missed the thumbing through the pages. I missed the book. And now Amazon, one of the biggest things that they sell is still books. I order 3 books a week still. And the deck just had a reshuffle. The Kindle found its place, but the book didn't really go anywhere. And so that reshuffling of the deck is constantly happening right now. And people are looking for, sustainability, and people are looking for structures and foundation. And in this metamorphosis that we're in, I think it's very challenging to, find definitions of things because it's changing.
Like freedom, definitions of things like freedom, like
Correct.
identity. Yeah.
Correct. Like even like for again as a military veteran and as a U.S. citizen, there's this argument about like the Constitution, like and rules and laws, and it's like, well,
Hmm.
you got to realize when that Constitution was written, it was written and kind of agreed upon that that steady state was happening, and we were agreeing as a country to a steady state. Now we're in this crazy evolution, this massive shuffling of the deck, and people are like, well, I'm losing this or I'm gaining this. And it's like, well, we're not done yet, right?
Mm.
And so it's very hard to sit there and go like, are my rights being taken away? I mean, like literally laws are shifting 90 days one way and 90 days another
Yeah.
way, and both sides are getting mad about it. Instead of, I think really that's where it becomes about like, what do, like, I have very strong beliefs. I think I can have a conversation with people, and I'd say 90% of the things that you think you care about, you don't really care about. There's a story, there's an identity tied to that, that
Mm-hmm.
we unpin it a little bit, that you really don't care about it. Like, I very much worked with a lot of people during 2020, and I have a very clear picture after all that to be like, most people really only care about, during that time, they only cared about three things. Number one, they cared that the economy kept moving, because in the United States, you need that. Number two, they cared about food, water, and basic needs, because that was a challenge for a lot of people, which is a safety and security thing. And number three, they cared about their family. And yet there's all this noise online and all this like problems that people go seeking, because when those things are being actually threatened, then they go find problems. But that's where in our world, the utility of money is so important, because I don't think that money will make you happy, but it is a utility that will create resources for you, that if you really wanted your freedom, that if you really wanted more control over your time, if you really wanted more control over your energy, that is the utility that will grant you all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's finite, just as a utility, not the ego of money and not all the negative things around it. The utility of money will be the path of least resistance to grant you much more freedom, much more momentum in your life, and much more even emotional freedom in your life.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing for people who have money stuff.
Well, it's a lot of people who have money and still don't feel free, who have a lot of resources and still the inner freedom is,
Well,
the journey.
correct. And that's an inner thing versus an external thing.
Yeah. So inner freedom, outer freedom. And I mean, even having even identities, like if you're when you're choosing your identity, the freedom to choose, right? That is an inner peace that is like you can use the system instead of the system using you, because ultimately we are not our identities, and the more we identify with things, once that thing is no longer who am I? I'm nobody. I don't know who I am anymore and what I'm here to do, right? So one of the things you say all the time, your jam, it's about you're like, what's she gonna say? Before you have an emotional problem, you have a math problem.
Yeah.
Kind of weaves into what we're talking about, right? Or maybe not.
It 100% does. What's interesting about that is people, I love when people push back on me for that one. But if you even go like super, super spiritual, you go into sacred geometry, it is all math.
Mm-hmm.
It is
Yeah.
all math. And if you even go into, this, right? I just hold on my phone for a second. The operating system of a cell phone came from somewhere. And they find this oftentimes with very even atheist software engineers, that many times when they create server farms and they create all of these different dimensional architectures, they oftentimes build them to look like sacred geometry, and have never known that was even a thing. And so if you look at it as like to quote, I was just at a Donnie Epstein thing last week, a very small gathering with him, and he said it very, very well. He said, relationships, you have a relationship app in your head. You have a finances app in your head. You have love app in your head. And all the apps are all fed by data, and the data comes into the app, and the app goes into the operating system, and the operating system is reacting all day long. And so really, it really is that people are misusing their emotion, because we have too much great stuff going on, and therefore we defer to our emotions. And if you go back, into the work that I've done with indigenous peoples, and you've done a lot of work with indigenous peoples, it's like, if you're hunting and gathering and didn't need to worry about your LaCroix or worry about your Wagyu beef or what sushi place you're going to go to for dinner, but if you really had to fend for yourself and think about where you're going to hunt and gather food from, at some point you would recognize that you've been gathering and hunting food in a certain area, and your intuition or your math would say food is getting a little scarce here.
Mm.
And you wouldn't flip out and throw a tantrum because they didn't have oat milk. What you would do is gather your family because your math and your intuition picked up, and you would pick up and move because that was the intuition that was guiding you to do the thing that the human condition does, which is actually respond, not react to the environment that it's in. And now, because between misinformation and too much sedentary time and not enough connection with a greater power, it's like, if I don't get my oat milk, I'm going to throw a panic thing, and then it's going to ruin my day. And then you don't understand me, and
Oat milk.
right. And it's funny because in my own journey, because I didn't grow up with that, a lot of that foundation, when I've explored that foundation, what I find is people who focus on creating a family, people who focus on creating resources and focus on, let me make a lot of money, people who focus on their health, people who focus on being what I call emotionally fit and mental fitness. If you focus on those 4 or 5 things, again, which is a math problem, a lot of your other problems will go away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Your attention means the world to me. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share or subscribe. Click the button. There's a red button somewhere on this page. Subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications. Take a moment to review the show, comment on this episode. Your engagement, your attention means the world to us, and it really helps us spread these important messages and enables us to continue to put this amazing content out in the world. So thank you for being part of this conversation. Your attention means the world to me. And now, back to this episode.
And I just find it over and over again. The one quick last one I'll say is, when I first started getting to coaching, I was very, very actually anti-coach for a very, very long time. There's just stigmas in the marketplace. There's a lot of errors and a lot of things. And so I was very solution oriented, very much like someone says, hey, my problem is I don't have enough money. Well, let's go make you more money. My problem is this. I was just very much like brass tacks, like, the thing that you're not doing, go do the thing that you're doing. And obviously that was not the best way to approach that. But fast forward now to doing for several years, what's actually really funny is whenever I talk to somebody and they say to me, here's my problem, or even here's my goal, here's the thing I'm trying to accomplish, 9 times out of 10, I will say this: I want you to do me a favor. For the next 10 days, I want you to drink a lot of water. I want you to eat really, really healthy food. I want you to go have at least 3 or 4 social events with friends. If you're in an intimate relationship, I want you to have sex multiple times. And I want you to exercise. And I want you to get good sleep. And then in 10 more days, come back to me and tell me what we're really going to work on. 75% of the people that do it, that come back for the next phone call, the thing they really want to work on is not what that first phone call was about. Now, if you're doing that every single day and you're just kind of creating problem and think it's this and think it's this and think it's this, which is also an identity thing, then you're just solving problems that you don't really have. And then that fatigues your intuition, which again is a math problem. It's all boiling down to, we all have emotions, but we don't want to have them control us. And whenever we can create the math problem, it takes the emotion away from it. We can zoom out from it, and then we can come up with a proper solution.
Why not call it math solution?
Tell me more.
It's a math solution. So you have a math problem, right? But really the solution is math. It's a math solution, right?
True. True. Maybe I need to update the language.
I love it. I love this so much. And while you're speaking, what I'm thinking about, I just had a conversation with an astrologer talking about, I mean, first of all, Pluto, for example, conjuncting the sun now, which is what happened when the United States was formed. So we are in this total epoch, a cycle shift. And there's obviously all of the ancient yugas and the ancient prophecies and calendars of math telling us that we're in this big cycle change. And so I'm always zooming out. And I think, each of us have an individual astrology as well. We have an individual essence in nature. So I want us to meet somewhere here and say, well, when you're talking to somebody who has a completely different character, like a different character, different essence, totally different energy, like they're sourcing from, we can choose. And we also have our nature based on our astrology, our incarnate math formulas. And so how do you reconcile, or maybe it's not the right word reconcile, but merge, you have a specific grit, resilience, and math equation for Neal. And does that always apply for everyone? And if it doesn't, is it that, oh, there's something wrong, they're focused too much on their emotion, or they have a different essence? And what's their math equation?
Ooh, I really like this. Great question.
And I know you are an astrology receiver consulter.
Well, that's the thing is like there's a big kind of coming home experience that I've been through over the past several years. And I'm actually very like, I feel like I have zero control and I'm not meant to have any control over this. I think that all of us are meant to have our own journeys and our own stories and all of that. It's part of the human condition. That said, there's this like very egoic thing to work through. I'll give you a couple good examples, but to be like, the thing that you think you want, is that really what you want? And I
Mm,
the hard part is to your point, you said like I think we've talked about this in past conversations. We both know people who are very, very wealthy and are still just not happy. But there may the unpacking of that, right? In one of my coaching frameworks, we talk about unpacking a lot. I use a Marine Corps methodology, a framework here of like, in the Marine Corps, you get issued this like big backpack that can hold like 100 pounds of stuff in it. It's super durable. You take it everywhere you go, and they always inspect your gear before you travel, before you go and deploy anywhere. And the reason for that is because if you're going to carry 90 pounds of gear with you, and the difference between carrying 90 pounds and 95 pounds and what you're capable of doing is actually a lot. So you don't want to bring cold weather gear to the desert. You don't want to have a poncho, in the desert, like because like it just weighs you down. And what I find as we evolve, teenage 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, the biggest thing is that people are carrying around, right, stories and things
mhm.
that just don't serve them well anymore, and then wonder why they're so weighted down. And bringing this into like, what is the math equation for everybody? I had a client of mine call me just a couple of years ago, and she called me and she said, Neal, super lonely. And she was very, very emotional. She was like, I just don't understand what I'm doing wrong. She said, I own a business, I make lots of money, I'm beautiful, my kids are older, they're out of the house almost. I've been single for 5 or 6 years. I go on dates and I can't find anybody. And I said to her, I don't think you have an emotional problem. I think you have a math problem. And she said, you're full of shit. Like,
Mm.
this is math. This is not math. Stop being a man, blah, 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 blah. And I said, here, yeah, I'm going to help you right now. We're going to develop your math problem. Do you know the type of man that you would like to have in your life? Very clearly. Can you visualize this? Right. This is where the manifestation, and the attraction and the abundance pieces come into this. And she knows, Neal, I know very, very clearly. I said, go ahead, tell it to me. And she was like, I need him to make 3 times more money than I do, because so I can feel safety and security. I'd like him to be in this type of physical shape because I'm in this type of physical shape. I'd like him to be like this and this and this and this. I said, perfect. Where do you live? And she's like, I live here. I said, great. Within a 50-mile radius of where you live, how many of those men do you think exist? And she said, I never thought about it like that. And I said, well, I think it's like 10. She lives in a very rural area, not near a major city, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I said, where do you think that man, lots of those men exist? And she was like, West Palm Beach. West Palm Beach, Florida, there's definitely a lot of those people. And she mentioned 2 other cities. I said, well, how much, now that you know this, how much longer are you going to continue to live in a math problem that you cannot solve? And literally 6 months later, she packed up, sold her house, moved to West Palm Beach. 3 months later, she met her now husband, and they've been happily married for 3 or 4 years. And it's really that easy. It is shrinking down this emotional problem to every single person that's ever reached out to me. And lots of times it does tie into something astrologically and into universal and something like that, because you have to factor in all of these pieces into the equation. That's where it is.
Yeah.
There's something that I am tapped and tuned into that is sacred in nature, that is beyond me, that just recognizes that before you have any type of emotional problem, there's absolutely a universal math problem that can be applied to every single one of these things. I mean, like if someone says, Neal, even people, I wake up, I'm depressed. I wake up, I'm this. I wake up, I'm like this every single day. It's like, well, let's develop a math equation for what you need to do every day in order for you to change the story. And,
Yeah.
for anybody who's a geek on habits and routines and stuff like that, it's pretty much documented at multiple places. You got to do the habit for 21 days to make it, ingrained in you. You got to do it
Yeah.
for 44 days for this. And then you got to do it for 66 days for it to be like brushing your teeth or whatever that number is. Again, a math problem, which I would argue with anybody that what we call habits and routines today used to be called rituals and ceremonies because they were
Mm-hmm.
from moon to moon, from season to season, from this number to this number.
It brings to mind this moment we're in right now where there are there's multiple possibilities of every moment, and it's really our perception. And this is what you're talking about too, right? Perception. I love how you talk about situational awareness. Okay, there's nobody around in 50 miles from where you live. That's like situational awareness. And I think we're in this moment right now of an invisible an invisible situation, and so many people talking about uncertainty, and no one knows where we're going, and we don't know, and we also do know. And let's talk about AI for a little while and about where you see. I know that you have a really positive outlook. You use AI a lot in your world, and I do too. And I'm starting to more and more. And I'm also really discerning, and I'm noticing like I can just see ahead of it sometimes where it's starting to get really noisy out there. And I really appreciate authenticity and human connection and reading things that people write. And now you can tell who's writing with AI, and you can tell what's what. And it feels so inauthentic to me in the public commons online, that is. So I'd love to hear your take on AI, and I know you're a wonderful advocate. Talk about AI and human relations. Hey everyone, it's me, Stephanie. I wanted to pause this episode and just check in and see how you're doing. We're living through some crazy times right now. We got crazy, oh my God, intense, and we also have amazing. It's a really potent time of evolution. And if you're on that spiritual path, new gifts are coming online. We're being brought to our knees. We are navigating, we are ready to release all of the old programs and patterns. And what I see as we navigate this liminal moment is that our inner worlds can easily mimic the existential uncertainties and chaos in our outer world. We're all navigating some form of an identity shift, and so many people are seeking clarity. So whether you are the clarity seeker and you're ready to activate whatever the next level is for you, the next thing is for you, or you are the soul seeker and you are ready to fully evolve and connect to your deeper authentic power and your unique medicine, or whether you're the pathfinder and it is go time, you're the business mission builder right now, and it is about putting your gifts and talents into the world, from the messaging, all the pieces of that, and who you get to be in that journey, or whether you are the wayfinder and you're ready to expand. You're the visionary leader ready to expand and bring in our new earth. The wayfinders are the bows of the ship. They see in the dark, the navigators, the seers, the intuitives. So whether any of these resonate for you, whether you're seeking clarity and ready to activate, whether you're the soul seeker and ready to evolve, whether you're the pathfinder and ready to emerge, or whether you are the wayfinder and it is time to expand, I invite you to a one-on-one inquiry session with me to explore working together. I have been coaching visionary leaders and entrepreneurs, next gen investors for 3 decades now. And it is a absolute honor to hold the sacred space for people to expand and evolve into their higher becoming. So if this is resonating with you at all and you are interested in having this free inquiry session with me, if you're seriously, really serious about exploring working together, then there is a link on this page for you to click. And you can also go to rippleyouриmpact.com and we will have a call very soon. Thank you for taking the time. And now let's return to this episode.
The short version, and we'll dig into a little bit, is what I'm most excited about. A lot of the things that again, this is totally identity based. We have as a society gatekeep knowledge for thousands of years. And the identity and the unpacking of that is just so exciting to me. I always say the thing is not the thing. It's not that AI is going to take away the job. It's not that AI is going to take over. It's none of those things. But every single person is going through who touches it or even doesn't touch it. Even the people who are like, I would never use that. It is an unpacking of your entire identity of the value of you as a human.
Yeah, I want to push a little on to that because I fully hear you. And I think there's also, I think so much of our identity or who we are or coming to know thyself is a lived experience. And I'm seeing like we can quantum leap that knowledge and access all this knowledge. It doesn't actually create the embodied lived experience. And I'm curious, that's what I'm waiting to see play out. That's what I'm sensing in the field a lot. And then people are like, oh, I know this now. It is enabling, I think, a cracking, a quickening of evolution for sure. Like there's seeing that. And then there's also seeing this like a tad of immaturity in the embodiment of wisdom that we, like, or maybe push back. Is it like, do we maybe give up the identity or belief that we need to gain our self-realization through sweat equity? Like maybe not.
Well, that's why I think, like, again, going back to this reshuffling of the deck piece of
Yeah.
it, is I think we have to realize that things that we used to value as skills are no longer valuable anymore. And they probably weren't supposed to be anyway, right? Like you and I have, sat in jungles throughout the world with very empathetic and very intuitive people, and people who are actually more than happy just to sit in silence next to you around a fire. And that's enough.
For their whole life.
Share time with somebody. It wasn't even like we went racing cars or went to the gym together or had a matcha. It was literally like that was enough, right? The soft skills and the embodiment of that human was strong enough that sitting by the fire
Mhm.
next to you was more than enough, right? And that's a value thing. Now you fast forward into traditional westernized culture, somebody who went to Harvard and spent $400,000 on their education values that education and that identity so great that they immediately ask every person that they ever meet, where'd you go to school? And I think that's the thing that's unraveling here is
Yeah.
like there is a model in the identity, but also in the societal business world of like going to McKinsey or Ernst and Young, getting an analyst, talking to them for several hours, having them bill $650 an hour, and that person thinks that they're worth, right? Again, thinks they're worth
Yeah.
that much time versus in the world of AI, I take this little device called Plod. I clip it on my shoulder, on my collar. I record my entire conversation. I have a 17-minute conversation with somebody. I upload it into ChatGPT. I take the job description from the McKinsey website, upload it into ChatGPT, and say, hey, be a McKinsey consultant and give me the answer that a McKinsey consultant would give here. And in 27 minutes, I've got an entire PowerPoint presentation that would have cost $5,000 to $10,000 to get from a McKinsey consultant. And now I have access to that knowledge. While people are sitting there fighting or frustrated about
Mm.
like AI learning me, there are people in Africa that you think you and I are evolving. Imagine what somebody in Ethiopia or Somalia, by ChatGPT giving them access to Harvard level education and knowledge, is able to do for their lives. Like that's the biggest thing is people are not thinking big enough with this stuff. Like I
Mm.
very much worked on a project where there are literally cities in Africa that are preparing to compete with like strong tech infrastructures in the United States for an eighth of the cost.
Mm.
But that eighth of a cost will change the generation of that African family forever.
Yeah.
Right? The people that are fighting over things right now, anything, if you're fighting, like, there's a harsh reality again in this identity stuff. If you are protesting, you're
Yeah.
doing it wrong because
Mhm.
it is not the vessel or the vehicle to use it to use in today's age. Social media can beat every single person on the street, with the identity that we have to raise our fist in the air and protest these things. And all of these technical things, what it all comes down to, though, is after the deck reshuffles, and it's going to have to happen for everybody, is it will bring back the need for soft skills, for intentional thinking, for all, like you see the person who's writing every blog with AI, that's going to lose its magic, very quickly. It's a moment in time that will be erased,
Yeah. Mm.
but it will bring everybody back to the values of being heart-centered, being authentic. It's just not going to be a comfortable way to get there at all.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a nice frame.
Well, if you look at it, right, I'm very fascinated by this. When fast food restaurants started, the McDonald's and Burger Kings of the world, food was healthy. They made burgers and bread. Then they had this great model. We're going to hire teenagers and we're going to teach them skills and pay them to learn. And then over time, the food became processed and poor nutrition and all those things. And then when the housing market burst happened years ago, the next thing you know, it wasn't young people working at McDonald's and Burger King anymore. It was 45-year-old people now taking this job that was built to be a part-time job and a skill builder. And now this was their full-time job. And then when they started to argue that they're not being paid enough and they were ready to riot about it, then the companies turned around and said, all right, you want us to raise the rate of what we're paying you? Absolutely. We will raise the rate of what we're paying you. Then there was 20 people at McDonald's. They reduced it to 12 people and then started to build these kiosks into the things, which is now AI driven and kind of automated ways to get the food. Well, guess what? At the end of this, it turns out we don't need fast food. We shouldn't be eating fast food. So if that whole category goes away because of AI, we probably weren't supposed to have it anyway. But people are not focused on like what that should be looking like because they're too busy reacting to the change.
I love how you think, Neil. I love how you bring in the anecdotes and the case studies. You have a lot of context. It's really beautiful. I'd say the drama. There's such a a mind control program. And I say this with love. It's not like fear and bad. It's being discerning. There's such a mind control program because I've noticed myself if I get an inch distracted, I'm like, oh my God, stop. And it's like, what is that? Some drama that's unfolding in politics and this and that, the stories. And so really how much sovereignty and freedom do we have over our minds right now? And while there is so much information and it's all curated for us for a certain to distract, I want to sound negative. There's a lot of curation for us to be distracted. And there's a lot of opportunity for us to leverage this moment, right? And that's where you're sitting, I'm sitting. It's like, how do we leverage our moment, stand in our power, own our power as sovereign creators? And everything you just said, that's what you're speaking to. And that's why I love you and I love your work and what you represent. So you have one more message to share with everybody. Like there's a million people listening because everyone shared this with 10 people they know. Everyone subscribed. Now we have a million subscribers to Catalyst Talks podcast. And what is that one thing they need to hear from Neal right now, that timeless thing
I
right
think
now?
I appreciate this ask very much. I think we need to stop looking for villains more
Mm,
than anything. I think that, it's too easy, to your point, right? Building off of your point a little bit, it's too easy to say the water is bad, the chemicals in the food, the sun is going to hurt you, you're going to get cancer, like the Bluetooth thing, you can, it's endless. And I'm not saying that there aren't merits and facts to many of those things. But if you really focus on your priorities to be eat healthy food, right? Um, drink good water, get good sleep, get exercise, have healthy social interactions, have as much sex as you can, and you really focus on those things. And when you decide you're going to go out and get processed ice cream at the local ice cream place, and you're not going to victimize it in any way, shape, or form, or maybe once in a while you're like, you know what I really want? McDonald's French fries. And you're not going to victimize yourself for it in any way, shape, or form. But you have to be doing those basics first. Like I think it's so fascinating to watch so much social media where people are like, don't eat this and don't do that and don't do this and don't do that. A good example is when I train for endurance races, because I've done a bunch of Ironman events. It's like, you know what? I can eat as many gummy bears and Swedish fish as I want when I'm running a marathon, because no matter what chemical is in it, I'm going to burn it off. But does that mean that I'm going to sit and eat bowls of gummy bears and sit on the couch and watch Netflix and just constantly be, poisoning my body? No, of course not. And I think the biggest piece is if people just take a bunch more of self accountability and don't stop looking for the villains in the conversations and really, really focus on those 5 or 6 things, they will naturally have a better outcome.
I love that. Thank you. And I do have to say, I think there's a healthy balance of education, right? Of understanding, well, is it only my outcome and what's good for me? Or is it like, well, how does this thing affect other people? So I see a bigger equation in there. I agree with you wholeheartedly, right? Ultimately, happy people who eat gummy bears are probably putting off a better frequency that's going to transmute any negative consequence of the production and downstream unintended consequences of producing and manufacturing gummy bears. However, I think it's really good to have that 360 view of how is this impacting me? How is this impacting other? Because how it impacts others is affecting me. So I think it is like, it could be linear, like you said, just do these things and get in the good place. And then you're going to be open and you're going to have a greater awareness of the 360 impact and reverb effect. And right. So I think it's an interesting multidimensional equation. For the sake of our word, I think that's going to be the title of this podcast, the equation. One of my great opportunities is you're a great reflection of this, is get out of the mind, get it into the body, get into action. And then fine, if you think that way, do the thing in alignment with that thing, because it's that coherence and congruence that actually, you always say this too, right? Like, business happens at the speed of trust, and we got to trust ourselves first. We got to trust ourselves first. So yeah. Thank you so much for your time here, Neal. We will share everything about you in the show notes and links where you can find Neal, learn about his work, and follow him on social. He puts a lot of great content out there. Yeah, thank you so much for your attention. It means the world to me.
Thank you. This is amazing. I'm so glad we did this.